Hello everyone, I'm Miss Davena. Welcome to Story Time. Today we are going to be talking about pilgrims because we are getting ready for Thanksgiving. Next week we'll be talking about Thanksgiving, but today our topic is pilgrims. So we're going to go ahead and we'll get started with our hello song. So everybody help me out. We're going to clap our hands, we're going to pat our laps, however you want to do it, but we're all going to sing together. We're going to sing it through 2 times. Ready? Here we go. Hello everybody and how are you? How are you? Hello everybody and how are you? Again. Hello everybody and how are you? How are you? Hello everybody and how are you? How are you today? Well, I hope you're getting excited. Thanksgiving is one of my favorite times of the year. Actually, the whole month of November is one of my favorites. And we've been talking about different things. Last week we talked about Veterans Day and veterans. The week before that it was about Indians. And this week it's about pilgrims. And so my first book that I have for us is called If You Were a Kid on the Mayflower, and it's by John Sun. He is the author, and it's illustrated, meaning the pictures and the artwork is by Roger Zanni, or Zanni. I'm not sure how you pronounce it, but Zanni. And it's If You Were a Kid on the Mayflower. And what's the Mayflower? Does anyone know what the Mayflower is? Yes, what do you think? That's right. It's a ship or a boat, and we're going to hear all about the Mayflower. So we're going to join our friends here, and they're talking about what happened. Searching for a new home. England is a country that lies across the Atlantic Ocean from America, and we live in America, right? So 400 years ago, there was an official religion there. It was called the Church of England. But some English people, called Puritans, wanted to worship differently. One group of Puritans, called the Separatists, left England, and they spent some time in Holland, which is another country. And then they decided to sail to America and build a new home. These people became the group we now today call the Pilgrims. Imagine being a kid sailing across the Atlantic Ocean. You would be on a ship called the Mayflower. You would share a small, crowded space with many other passengers, and the voyage would be long, difficult, and dangerous. Turn the page to board the Mayflower as it sails into American history. And you will see that life today is a lot different than it was in the past. So on board the ship, they didn't have a lot of the same food that we had. And they didn't have refrigerators. They didn't have a place to store a lot of fresh food. So there were a lot of animals. And because it wasn't, there was no refrigeration, they had only certain things they could eat. One of the things they had was called hardtack, and it kind of looks like a cracker. It's kind of like a hard, dry biscuit, and they also ate a lot of beef, pork, or fish, but it wasn't, they had a lot of salt on it so that it would last, so it wouldn't spoil. And their main drink was beer because the water wasn't safe to drink. And if it was stored for a long time, it would make people sick. And since they were on the boat for a very long time, they couldn't trust that the water was safe to drink. But hardtack never spoils as long as you keep it dry. But being on a boat in the middle of the water, it might make it hard. You see all these people here, they're all together. And how many of you have your own room, or maybe just with a brother or a sister? Well, on the boat, the Pilgrims couldn't afford to travel on a passenger ship. That means a ship that carries people, that has special rooms. So if you ever go on cruises like the Disney cruise or any other cruises with mom and dad or any of your special grown-ups, those boats are not like they were when the Pilgrims came over. The Mayflower was a small cargo ship called a carrack. It wasn't meant to carry passengers, especially for long distances. Passengers were allowed only a few belongings or a few things each. So maybe one pair change of clothes and maybe a special toy or a doll. There was no room for beds. There were no rooms. So everybody was all in one great big room all together. So there was no way to get away from anybody else. And the Pilgrims had to share the space with everyone else. So if you look here, that's kind of what the inside of a cargo ship would look like. And a long time ago, the technology, so we have cell phones that have a GPS or a compass or anything like that. The technology, all we have to do is put an address in the phone, or even just say the place we want to go, and the phone will help us get there. It'll give us the directions. But that wasn't the way it was a long time ago. So for sailing ships, the crew members aboard the ship, like the Mayflower, used a different kind of tool to find out which direction they were heading. And one of these tools was called a cross staff. Sailors would line up the cross staff with the horizon, which is where the sky meets the earth, and they would find a certain star, and then they would line that up like this. So you see here how it's got the lines, and they're lining it up, and then that would help them find the direction that the ship needed to go. So it would tell them where their latitude was. And on the ocean is called the latitude and the longitude. Oh, what's happening there? It's a big storm. Look at all of that. And when we get a storm, we can run inside, but where are they? They're out in the middle of the ocean. So they can't just run inside in the middle of a storm. And there were a lot of animals aboard the ship. There were chickens and pigs and dogs were the main kind. And the main kind of dog that came over was called the English Spaniel. And you might think that a dog wasn't an animal that could be helpful, but they were good hunters. So that was one of the reasons that was one of the dogs that came. At least 2 dogs came along. One was an English Mastiff and the other an English Spaniel. Pilgrim journals mention chicken broth, so historians believe that chickens must have been on board too. And some think there were also a few pigs. These would help the Pilgrims start their settlement in America. So when they were coming to America, there weren't stores for them to buy things in. So they had to be able to make and grow and raise all their own food. So look at all these people all in one room. Do you ever go on a long trip and you're like, are we there yet? Well, sailing ships like the Mayflower were powered by the wind. And at sea, strong winds could blow up to 80 miles an hour, making the 3,000-mile journey across the Atlantic Ocean normally take about a month. But that's if there were no storms. If there were storms, like we saw on this other page here, it could slow them down or even make them wreck. So heavy storms, there were a lot of heavy storms when the Pilgrims were coming over on the Mayflower. And that extended their voyage to 66 days. That's 2 months and a couple of days. That's a long time to be stuck on a boat with no bathrooms, no refrigerators, no running water, and not being able to replace all the food that you ate. So there was a lot of things that they didn't have on their boat when they were sailing. And then their route here, you can see here's their route from England all the way over. Let me see what I have here. Now, if the Mayflower started to sink during the storm, the passengers would have to escape using lifeboats. But there was only one small lifeboat on the top deck called a shallop, and it could carry about a dozen people. There was also a longboat that needed to be rowed by 10 to 12 men. But the 2 boats weren't big enough to carry all the people on board. Thankfully, the Mayflower never sank. So does anybody know how many people actually came across on the Mayflower? The Mayflower carried 102 passengers and 30 crew members. Only one person did not make it to America, and his name was William Button. Button was sick for most of the voyage, and he died just 3 days before land was sighted. One baby was born on the ship, and he was given the name Oceanus. William Bradford is a person that wrote a list of all the Mayflower's passengers, and he had journals and he kept track of their story. And that's why we know the stories that they did. So they left England and Holland to go to Holland in 1608, and then in August 5th in 1620, they started their voyage. September 6th, that's a month later, the Speedwell returned to port, and some of its passengers moved to the Mayflower, and then they leave from England. November 9th, the Mayflower's crew spots Cape Cod just as the sun rises. So that's right about now. It's coming. We just passed November 9th. December 26th, the day after Christmas, the Pilgrims finally settle in Plymouth, Massachusetts. So they started in August, and they didn't get settled until after Christmas time. So that was a long trip on a boat with not a lot of things to do and not a lot of food to eat. And a lot of the Pilgrims were really anxious to get here. So if you were a kid on the boat of the Mayflower, it probably wouldn't seem like it was very fun. So the song I have for us goes to the tune of Mary Had a Little Lamb, and it goes, Pilgrims sailed the ocean blue, Pilgrims sailed the ocean blue to find a brand new home. They landed near Plymouth Rock. They landed near Plymouth Rock. That's where they made their home. Okay? So here we go. We'll go like this. The Pilgrims sailed the ocean blue, ocean blue, ocean blue. The Pilgrims sailed the ocean blue to find a brand new home. They landed near Plymouth Rock, Plymouth Rock, Plymouth Rock. They landed near Plymouth Rock. That's where they made their home. So they were on a boat, right? They were on a boat, and they were on the ocean blue. So those are a couple of the signs that we can use in this song. So we'll go ahead and we'll sing it one more time, and it goes like this. The Pilgrims sailed the ocean blue, ocean blue, ocean blue. The Pilgrims sailed the ocean blue to find a brand new home. They landed near Plymouth Rock, Plymouth Rock, Plymouth Rock. They landed near Plymouth Rock. That's where they made their home. So they made their new homes near Plymouth Rock. And there's the words to the song, Sailing Across the Sea. So my next book that I have for us is another story, and this is a real story. And it's called Samuel Eaton's Day, The Day in the Life of a Pilgrim Boy by Kate Waters. And there's some real pictures in here, not of the real pilgrims, but of what they call reenactors, or a place where they reenact what it's like to be a pilgrim and to have lived in pilgrim times. But they're dressed like the pilgrims would have been dressed. And Samuel Eaton was a child during this time in America. So we're going to learn a little bit about what his day was like. So this starts in July of 1627. So it's about 7 years after the Pilgrims got to America. Good day to you. I am Samuel Eaton. My family sailed from England to this new world 7 years ago on the ship Mayflower. I was a mere sucking child then, and I don't remember the voyage or our first winter here. Nearly half of the people died. My mother was one. Father and Ma'am are married now, and I have a wee sister called Rachel. Today is the day I have been longing for. I am to help with the rye harvest for the first time. It is my beginning to be a man. If I can show Father that I am up to the task, perhaps he will let me help with all the harvest. So he's excited because he's finally going to get to help harvest. And look at the village, the way it is. Look, see, they don't have the type of village, or the type of streets like we have. There's no room for cars, is there? You would have to walk. This is our village, Plymouth Plantation. The land was wild when we first came ashore. My father's talents as a carpenter have been much in demand in this new land. He has aided in the building of all you see. So his father, his dad, helped build everything that you can see in this picture because he's a carpenter. And that's someone that builds with wood. I am up at first light. I'm so eager that I have hardly slept. I get out of bed and get dressed. And look at all the things he's got to do to get dressed. First, he puts on what? His stockings. Then garters, because they don't have elastic, so his socks aren't going to stay up. So he's got ties that he ties around him to hold him up. Then he puts on his breeches, which are like your shorts or your capri pants. And then a doublet, which is a jacket. Now he looks different than how we would dress, doesn't he? And then his shoes, and then points. That means mom or ma'am will help tie the pants so they stay closed. Ma'am helps me tie my points. Go then quickly now, Samuel, she says. Thou must tread to thy labors before thou goest to the fields. And thou mustn't keep thy father waiting this morn, lest he leave thee behind. So he's got to get his hat and leave, because they always put a hat on when they left the house. So now he's rushing out because he doesn't want to get left behind by being late. First he goes to the spring to fetch water, and he sees his friend Sarah. And she laughs and says, boy, you're growing up now, Samuel. You're not a baby anymore. Now I'm almost grown. I can help catch game for the table. So he's setting a trap for a rabbit, and that's for dinner. And he learns how to do that, and he's learned to do that. He's setting the snare. And on his way back, he gathers firewood. Is that how you start your day? Boy, he's only 7 and he's doing all this stuff. In other seasons, Ma'am would go with Father to reap, but now she's not feeling well. I think I might have a new brother or sister on the way. I know that Ma'am will miss my help, but I'd rather try to do a man's work this day. So before breakfast, he has to brush his clothes and wash his hands and face. So he did all this stuff before he even got a chance to eat breakfast. Wow, that's a lot of work before breakfast. Father says a blessing before we eat. Look at their food. Look at that. That's a pretty interesting way to sit down and have breakfast, isn't it? I serve Father and Ma'am. Rachel is learning to eat grown-up food, and some goes in, but she loses some of it on the way. So it looks like they have bread and butter and probably porridge or like oatmeal. That's a very simple breakfast. No Pop-Tarts or waffles or yogurt and granola. That's not what they had for breakfast. And after breakfast, it's time for them to go. So look how excited he is going with his father and the other men to go work on the harvest. Are you that excited to go to work? Our ground seems so big, and since the first planting, my friends and I have come out to scare the birds away from the new plants. I'm not grown enough to wield the sickle, but it can cut a man's arm off, so I stay away. Father and Robert Bartlett reap the rye with the sickle and lay it behind. It's my task to gather and bind the rye. So the men cut it, and he's got to come behind them and gather it all up and tie it into a bundle. That's a lot of work. Let's see how he's doing it. He's learning how to do it. Robert is showing him the right way to do it. And then pretty soon he gets to do it on his own. And the men are singing while they're working because they don't have a radio, so they sing along as they work. I like to sing when I'm working outside, even if I don't have a radio. When the sun is high, I finally see Mam and Rachel coming with dinner. Of a sudden, I feel small, and it's a struggle not to cry, but I mustn't let Father see it. So then they all sit under the tree and eat lunch together or dinner together. His legs and his back hurt, and he's really glad to have a break to sit down. He's got all kinds of blisters on his hands, and he's sore and tired. When Mam notices them, she takes him down to the water so he can put his hands in to cool it down. And I tell her I have to stay because I want to help bring in the rye, even though I'm pretty much done. And I'm grateful that Mam does not fret overly, and I think she won't tell Father how much I hurt. So I lay down to rest by the brook. I could stay here all day. But all of a sudden, Father is calling. He shows me how to hone the sickle. That means to sharpen it. Then it's time to go back to cut more rye. Wow. And they keep working and working all day long until it's almost dark, until the sun is setting. I've got straw in my breeches. It's down the back of my neck. My way with the rye seems harder now, not easier, but I try not to fall behind. At last, the sun is setting. On the way home, Robert Bartlett and I stopped to gather mussels for the evening meal. They are slippery and cling to the rocks, and the salt water stings my hands. Penshamuk and Amapu are gathering them as well, and we say good evening and turn towards home. Wow, that's a long day's work for a 7-year-old boy, isn't it? He didn't even go to school, and he was working all day. Robert Bartlett told him he had a good day and that he would work even better the next day, and that he did a really good job at his age. And he's truly happy. So at home that night, it's nearly dark when they get home. Though I'm not more weary than I remember, I blow bubbles with Rachel and set her to sleep. She will always want to be in Mam's way. Mam chops the parsley to flavor the mussels. We eat our fill of mussels and curds, and Mam asks about the rest of the day. So they had a very simple dinner, and he had to help prepare it. And they blew bubbles for fun, just like we blow bubbles. That's pretty cool. There will be no schooling for me tonight because Father has the watch. He puts on his armor, bandolier, and powder flask, and I hold his musket. Of a sudden, Father asks for a word with me. Uh-oh, what's he gonna say? At the gate, I am quiet, though I long to ask how I fared. We smell the air for rain and listen for the cries of wolves who want our cattle. Thou wert a fine help this day, son. Dost think thou canst keep at the harvest with the upgrown people? He's asking, do you think you can keep up with all the men? Oh, of course, I say. And of a sudden, the blisters and aches are not so important. So he's so happy. And so even though he's tired and sore and his hands hurt, he's really excited because he did a great job. So then he goes to bed, but his sister wants to play. And look, they have to have they don't have big houses, so they have to share a bedroom. Though my hands tingle and my legs are stiff, 'tis a man's hurts I am feeling. I pray that I will be able to keep up to Father's faith in me, and that the rains won't come before the harvest is done, that my snare will catch a fat coonie for Mam, and that God will protect us. Fare thee well with thy labors. God keep thee safe. Good night. Wow, that was a really busy day, and that was just one day. I don't know about you, but I'm tired just reading the story of what Samuel's day was like. So we're going to sing the song of 10 Little Pilgrims. And remember how to count to 10 in sign language? So let me move my little pilgrim people over here a little bit so I can pull this up where we can see it a little better. And it's just to the tune of 10 Little Indians. So it says on the Mayflower. So we're going to count up and then we'll count back down. 1 little, 2 little, 3 little pilgrims, 4 little, 5 little, 6 little pilgrims, 7 little, 8 little, 9 little pilgrims, 10 pilgrims on the Mayflower. Ready? 10 little, 9 little, 8 little pilgrims, 7 little, 6 little, 5 little pilgrims, 4 little, 3 little, 2 little pilgrims, 1 pilgrim on the Mayflower. We're going to do it one more time. And we're going to, remember, we're going to count from 1 to 10. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Right, ready? 1 little, 2 little, 3 little pilgrims, 4 little, 5 little, 6 little pilgrims, 7 little, 8 little, 9 little pilgrims, 10 pilgrims on the Mayflower. And how many pilgrims were there really on the Mayflower? Do you remember? 102, and 32 of them were children. So that's a lot of children on the Mayflower. And when they came to America, that first year, remember Samuel was talking about that half the people died? Well, almost all the people that were left were children. So there was a lot of really young boys and girls and not a lot of grown-ups. So they really had to work hard and help the grown-ups or they wouldn't survive. So life was not easy. So even when you think you're having a rough day and a hard day because school was tough and soccer practice was tough, just remember how hard and how much work that Sam did in just one day. And that was just the start before he even had breakfast. So that was a long day and they all worked hard like that. They did have time to play, but they had to do their work first. So just remember that there was a lot of difference between now and way back then. So we have life a little bit different than they did when they first came to America. Ready? One more time. 1 little, 2 little, 3 little pilgrims, 4 little, 5 little, 6 little pilgrims, 7 little, 8 little, 9 little pilgrims, 10 pilgrims on the Mayflower. And we'll go ahead and we'll sing our goodbye song. I want to say thank you for listening to my stories about the Pilgrims and the Mayflower. And remember when we talked about what something is nonfiction or true, and these are true stories that we were talking about. So the pictures in this one may not be real pictures, and these are real pictures. They weren't from the time of the Mayflower, but they're people dressed like, and the little village is set up just like the Pilgrims plantation, Plymouth Plantation was set up. And there are a lot of places that you can visit today that are set up just like they were when the Pilgrims came here, so that you can learn today what history was like and what it was like to live in the village as a pilgrim in the day in the life of Sam Eaton or Hope and any of the boys and girls that may have been here when the Pilgrims first came to America. So we'll go ahead and sing our goodbye song, and I will see you next week. Remember to check out the description box for activities. There's lots of fun activities and some games and crafts that go right along that some of the Pilgrim children may have done and played. So it'll be fun. You can pretend you're a pilgrim. And there's also Miss Davena's email in the description box, so that if you want your special grown-up or your mom or dad to go ahead and write an email and say hi to Miss Davena. I'd love to hear how you're doing, and you can tell me what's something fun that you're doing this year and what you might have learned. Maybe what your favorite Thanksgiving food is that you're looking forward to next week. So go ahead and say hello. If you want to have them take a picture of one of the crafts you made and send it to me, I'd love to see it. So let's go ahead and sing our goodbye song, and I will see you next week. We wave goodbye like this. We wave goodbye like this. We wave goodbye to all our friends. We wave goodbye like this. We clap our hands like this. We clap our hands like this. We clap our hands for all our friends. We clap our hands like this. Yay! Thank you. Goodbye.